Like a month ago, there was this tweet going around. We're canceling each other over book takes today. Post your cancelable book take. And I read a lot of the replies and I thought it was amazing, so I figured today we'll sit down and we'll just look at some cancelable book takes. The first one I have: a lot of masters of literature from old times weren't even that great. When you think about how education and literacy was limited to certain classes, it's less about them being talented and more about them having available resources and access to education. This one is like, it's a fair critique, but at the same time, like, that's what happens today, too. Like, a lot of really popular authors or writers aren't that talented, and they tend to be more privileged than not. Like, this is just an ongoing issue in society for forever. I don't think that means that, like, all classics aren't great. And I'm not even a classics person, but, like, you can't sit here and tell me that there's nothing to, like, Jane Eyre or, I don't know, I haven't read the other ones, but, like, War and Peace, I'm sure there's something there. I just don't really think this one's that cancelable, because it's like, yeah, I think anyone who knows anything about privilege, even a little bit, can, like, understand this and understand that it's still a thing. Whatever. Next one. Reading classic literature doesn't make you better than people who read adaptations or fan fiction. It does a little, though, I'm sorry. I'm noticing right now that the person who tweeted this, their little icon is a picture of Taylor Swift, and there's a hammer and sickle in it, which makes this even funnier to tweet, actually. I get the whole idea that, like, there's so much more to examine in classics, like, you can pick it apart and there's, like, these grander themes and the writing is beautiful and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but, I mean, that can also happen in adaptations of fan fiction. I mean, like, there can be more there. I'm not saying that it's there in everything, but I think it's just funny, this attitude that people have where they just want to feel better and, like, more superior than other people, especially within, like, the book community. There's a weird, like, intellectual ego that a lot of people feed into. So I don't know if this is, like, cancelable. I think this is definitely more controversial, and I think people should just, like, stop shitting on, like, things that are popular, because you just don't have to read adaptations of fan fiction if you don't want to. But it doesn't mean that you get to, like, act like you're a better person for it. I don't know. If you think an author needs to make it super duper clear that they don't endorse the bad actions or opinions of the main character, you're not mature enough to be reading more challenging pieces. That's a you problem, not the author's. I agree with this one. I don't know that I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think that authors, like, always pull off, like, the bad main character thing. And I do think that sometimes if they're doing it poorly, it can seem less like a critique and more like they're endorsing it. So I think it's all to, like, the skill of the author there. But at the same time, there's, like, bad need for critical thinking. I do think that some people definitely have an issue understanding that the main character doesn't always equal, like, a good person or a good character. This book actually made me think of my cousin, who's, like, not the most intelligent person I know. And when he watched Tiger King, he, like, wholeheartedly believed that Joe was a good person and, like, wholeheartedly backed him. And it's like, no. No, like, just because they're the main focus of what you're watching doesn't mean they're good. I do think this is a mistake people make. I think this tweet is funny. Signs of wear on books are good, actually. Stuff like coffee marks, oxygenation, I'm stupid, I can't say shit, rust, dog ears, random trinkets, and paper used as bookmarks, notes written in pencils, pen, markers, any kind of mark left on the book. Books are meant to be used, not hoarded. So there's two parts to this one. The first is just, like, the signs of wear. I get that. Personally, I'm an insane person, and when I have a used book, I'm just, like, constantly thinking of if the person who owned it before me washed their hands while touching it. And I do Clorox wipe down any used books that I buy. But I understand that I'm crazy. I mean, this is just, like, preference, though, right? Like, I know people who really prefer, like, a book that looks beaten up, and I love that aesthetic. I think it's great. Just personally, I'm just, like, a little bit too insane to enjoy that myself. I don't think that's cancelable, but I think it's silly to make it seem like that's the only good kind of book. I don't think they're doing that, though. And then the last part is books are meant to be used, not hoarded. This take I really like. I do think that with, like, book talk and booktube and stuff, there is a huge overconsumption of books. I mean, I see some, like, booktubers posting hauls every month, and every month they have, like, 30 books. And I'm someone who has a lot of books and buys way too many books. It's a problem for me, but at least I acknowledge it's a problem, first of all. And second of all, for me, it's kind of like Ariel Bissett described it once as when you collect wine, it's also like a collection thing. You're not buying books just to read right away, you're buying them and putting them on the shelf until you're ready for them. That's how I kind of think of it, but I do think there is a line that some people cross, and I do think it gets to the hoarding and the overconsumption and consumerism and capital. It's just gross. I get that. That's a good take. There's such a weird emphasis on reading fast. Like, if I was an author, you'd best believe I'd want a reader to pore over every single word I wrote with as much care and time as I put into it. Not cancelable, but fair. I do think that this can tie into, like, the previous one with, like, the points I was making about overconsumption of books and just general consumerism. Like, people want to get through them as fast as possible. I don't know that that's always the best way to enjoy a book, but at the same time, some people are just fast readers. Like, I used to be able to read a book a day when I wasn't as busy. So, I mean, whatever. I do think if I was an author and I spent like 3 years writing a book only for someone to get through it in 3 hours, that could be tough. Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think that's also just kind of like the nature of it now. This one's my favorite, I think. My favorite of the whole bunch. No more Harry Potter. You are not a Slytherin. You are 34. Oh, I love this. Someone had to say it, you know? Like, I read Harry Potter when I was in middle school too. I liked it. I was a middle schooler, and I think it's okay to have nostalgia for the things that you really liked when you were little. I think it's another thing to treat your favorite book series as a child as like the best thing ever written. Like, just because you have a nostalgic feeling over it doesn't mean that it's actually good, doesn't mean that it's well written, doesn't mean that it's the best piece of literature ever. And at this point, I personally hate Harry Potter, even though I used to love it, because I just hate what it is now. There's just all this different like series. The fans are insane, and not in a good way. And there's just too much Harry Potter stuff being thrown at you at all times. It's just like a huge money grab now. Not even to talk about J.K. Rowling, but like, even aside from that, I hate what Harry Potter is today. I think it's so weird. I'm sorry, because like what you want to like. I think it's so weird when people are still like so obsessed with Harry Potter. It's just, ugh, no. You're not Slytherin, you're 34. Growing an audience on Wattpad and publishing your writing from Wattpad are actually a really cool opportunity for writers, and we should stop treating Wattpad books with such a stigma and stop basing our judgment off of all of them, off of the few problematic ones. Yeah, this isn't cancelable. This is like completely fair. I think this also goes into like the first couple of tweets that we saw, where it's like people who are able to go the traditional publishing route are really fortunate, really lucky. That's all it is pure luck, and a lot of them are just very privileged as well. And I think that websites like Wattpad, where people can publish their own stuff and they can gain an audience like naturally to help them publish that, I think that's amazing. And I'm not like as online in like the bookish communities as other people are, so I don't really see people treating books like that with stigma, but if they do, it's stupid, and they should stop. I agree with this one. It's not cancelable. Why is every book a #1 New York Times bestseller? They're not. This one isn't cancelable. This one's just dumb. It's like, what? Why do you think every book's #1? I mean, there's definitely like many, but this just tells me that you're not like a real reader, that you only read or only see books that are like crazy popular. Because I bet I could just pick off random books off my shelf and they won't even say that. Virgin Suicides makes no mention of being a #1 New York Times bestseller. Wolfskin, Juliette Marillier, not a #1 New York Times bestseller. Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse doesn't say #1 New York Times bestseller. I think this is more of a you thing. I will purposely ignore physical character traits. They were blonde. No, they weren't, actually. I like this one too. This one's just funny. Like, yeah, you can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me what to imagine in my own little head. This one's fair. Not cancelable. You're gonna get some Harry Potter hate in this video. Percy Jackson is miles above anything J.K. Rowling will ever write. I would die on this hill. I would die on this hill. I read both as a kid. I loved both as a kid. I only still love the Percy Jackson series today. I no longer like Harry Potter. I love what Rick Riordan does with his series. I love bringing in the ancient mythology. I love how he tries to make it inclusive for kids. I love the idea in the Percy Jackson series of all the half-blood children having things like ADHD or dyslexia, and how that actually makes them have superpowers in a sense. I love that. I love how inclusive it is. I think Percy Jackson is miles above anything J.K. Rowling will ever write. This one, though, I will say is cancelable because the Harry Potter fans are crazy, and they won't admit the truth. Enemies to Lover, where the enemy was a bully, is not cute and actually glorifies abusers. This one's also fair. I think that enemies to lovers only really works out in fantasy or sci-fi books, where there's some sort of other like political thing, like they come from opposing kingdoms or something like that, they're vying for the throne, whatever it is. I just think like the key to this trope is that they're not actually enemies. They can't actually be like abusive towards each other and then like fall in love. I think that's the key here. I don't read much modern romance, so I actually don't really know how this is portrayed in modern romance books. I think that if you try to do a real enemy to lover thing in contemporary books, I can 100% see how that could glorify abusers. I do also think this one could be cancelable because I feel like, especially when it comes to romance tropes, people are very passionate about what they like. I don't think it's cancelable. I stand by whoever tweeted this. You can't cheat at reading. It's not a race. There are no competitors and no prizes. Y'all are just ableist. I mean, yeah, this one's fair. There's also like no winning at reading. Like, what do you get? Do you get like a little prize for reading in some way that you think is better? Maybe we should give this to the girl who said that she's better for reading classics than other people are because they read like fan fiction. No, it doesn't make sense. The other thing that also popped into my head for this was like audiobooks. How some people like try to argue that listening to audiobooks isn't reading, and it's just like, shut up. Like, why does it matter? Can't you just let people enjoy books? Isn't that why we read? It's because like we love books, and why does it matter? I don't get it. This person's right. Eating the pages you didn't like after you finish the book is fine and valid. Okay. Turning fan fiction into published fiction is ethically wrong at best, copyright infringement at worst, and goes against the entire ethos of fan fiction as free, transformative works. The only thing that really gets me here is the ethos of fan fiction as like free and transformative, because I do think that is something that's really unique about fan fiction. Again, as someone who doesn't read and has never read fan fiction, so like take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, I do think that's like really cool and like good to have like free books out there like that. I don't think I really agree with it being ethically wrong and copyright infringement, because I think from my understanding of fanfiction, it's not always just the exact things that like happen in the books. Like they can take like the characters and put them in a different situation or like change things, and I do think there is like a creative process that transforms it, even if you're using like a set of already known characters. I think too there's like a larger conversation to be had about intellectual property and whether intellectual property should be a thing. I think that's something we really take for granted as like a society, and I think that's kind of part of how individualized our society and capitalistic our society is. This one I do think could be cancelable. I don't think this is a good take. If you're always complaining about world building, just don't read high fantasy. True. A lot of other genres don't even necessarily need world building, like at all. Like contemporary books, it's not necessary. Romance, I'm sure it's not always necessary. Fantasy, like, that's something that makes the genre. If you don't like world building, why would you read fantasy? That's like one of the major elements of the just don't read it. Just don't read it. There are other books. More Harry Potter hate. We all have childhood books we have a deep connection with, but if you can't let go of it when its writer is harming so many communities, you have to reevaluate your choices. Yes, as I said before, I don't understand the Harry Potter thing. I don't understand people who are ride or die for Harry Potter, but even just the idea of loving a book series so much while its author is such a piece of shit and doing so much harmful things to our society is crazy to me. I think also part of this too is it's not just like evaluating your choices, but it's also like implicates where your money is going to. Like, if you just privately really love Harry Potter and you've had the same books for forever, you bought them used and they're just sitting on your bookshelf, it's like, whatever. I don't get it, but whatever. But if you're, like, still a diehard Harry Potter fan, then you're just spending your money on that. You're directly giving money to J.K. Rowling. I mean, there's the movies, there's the special editions they keep coming out with, like, all the books. There's so much merch and stuff, which is really what the diehard Harry Potter fans are about. Yeah, and I think that's wrong. And, I mean, I just don't like Harry Potter. We knew what my opinion on this was going to be, so let's go past this. The publishing industry ignores people in the 18 to 24 age group. YA feels too young, but diving straight into adult books isn't easy because they're a lot more complex. I want a transition genre. I know new adult is a thing, but it is so small because publishers don't care. This one's just, like, not true. I think you just need to read different adult books. The adult, like, genre of books is really widespread, and there's definitely adult books that aren't complex, like, at all. There's definitely adult books that read as YA, but just aren't YA. So there are books out there, you just gotta look a little harder. It's okay, you'll be fine. All books should be about werewolves from now on. Werewolves should be retroactively added to all books. From Dr. Werewolf. I don't agree with this one. I think that's cancelable. You can't read your way out of participating in systemic violence. No, you can't. She's right. I don't know if it's she. Con has like a woman with 3 eyes, so I don't know what their gender is. But yeah, they're right. You can't. I do see a lot of people talking about things like decolonizing their bookshelves and stuff, and like, I think to a certain degree, like, it's definitely important, especially for white people, to not only be reading white perspectives, but I mean, that's not gonna change society, and you need to be politically active, and there's no excuse for not doing so. Hard agree. When you read Tall, Dark, and Handsome, why would you be talking about a white man? This one really got me, because, like, why would you be talking about white man? Not cancelable? A very good point was made, though. So many YA books have done irreparable damage to people's ability to consume books where you're not meant to sympathize or agree with the main character. Some of y'all are violently swinging right back into Puritanism. This is a take. I just think it's so weird how people talk about YA books. Like, people talk about YA as if, like, that genre single-handedly has ruined, like, the intellectual fiber of our society. And this tweet is also weird because it assumes that there aren't YA books where you're not meant to sympathize or agree with the main character. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot of anti-heroes in YA. I don't get this one. I think this is stupid. I don't think it's cancelable because I don't think enough people, like, care about the cause that I'm bringing up, but I think they should be canceled. There should be a completely free online library with every book known to man in it. Yes, perhaps we should consider abolishing intellectual property. Maybe that's something that we should think about, at least to consider, like, weigh the pros and cons. I agree with this one. This is a perfect tweet. I personally think that over-annotating books with menial comments is excessive and destroys the natural rhythm of reading a novel. And over-tabbing books seems useless to me because if you're tabbing every second page, you can just reread the entire book. LOL. This one, it's like, I agree, because personally, I don't understand how you can, like, annotate and, like, tab books a lot. For me, that takes me completely out of it, and it ruins, like, the rhythm of reading. I also don't really understand the over-tabbing thing. It just seems like a lot of money to waste as well, because those things can be expensive, and some people put, like, 6 different tabs on every page. But at the end of the day, it's like, do whatever makes you happy, and that's fine. And I don't really care how you read. I will just never personally do it or fully understand it, but that's fine. YA books should not have sexual content. I'm sorry, but these characters are 15 to 16-year-olds fighting for their lives and they have time to have sex. Hard disagree? I mean, I'm not saying that there should be graphic smut in YA books, because I don't think that, but I think at the end of the day, like, 16-year-olds are having sex, and I think it's, like, kind of crazy, the idea that YA books shouldn't include any mention of that, especially because, you know, it's a good place to kind of talk about safe sex as well, just kind of casually. Yeah, I don't think this one makes sense. Also, not all YA books are fantasy, so not all characters in YA books are fighting for their lives. But even so, even in those books, like, again, like, teens are having sex, so I don't see any reason why the literature that they're reading shouldn't represent that. No one is even the slightest bit intellectually or morally superior for being a book reader. Yes, I love this one. I've never understood the idea, first of all, that just because you like to read, that's, like, smart of you. Like, that makes you a smart person, or that's a smart hobby. I don't understand that. I just think it's, like, a really weird belief. Even the morally superior thing I don't get, because again, I think that's tied into the ego of, like, thinking that reading's an intellectual thing to do, which I disagree with. I do think we should put this person up with that original person who thought that reading classics made them, like, a better person. I think they would have an interesting discussion. And then the last one, because I just felt it was really important to end with the most succinct and just best tweet that I saw out of all of these. If you read, you're dumb as fuck. Stupid. That's it. Goodbye.